Routines and structure. This is something that is no longer necessary whenever you're retired, right? We'll dig into that. I'm Josh. This is 9 to 5, and with me, as always, is my buddy Elliot. What's up, Elliot?
Hey, how's it going, Josh?
I'm doing really good. I'm looking forward to this conversation. This is a topic that came to my attention via our mutual friend, Sarah. She sent me a link to another podcast that is called Inside Out Money. The title of that episode was Treat Your Morning Like Your Money: The Power of Compounding Habits, episode 156. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So Sarah sent this to me, and honestly, I don't even know why she sent it to me, but if she's listening, she can leave us a comment. But it got me thinking a little bit about morning routines and morning habits. I listened to the podcast episode, and the host, she was talking about how she didn't really have any kind of routine or structure. She was early retired and she just let the day come to her. And some mornings she would not get out of bed till as late as 10 a.m., which really, I was shocked to hear that she has children. And she would say that her husband would just get the kids to get ready and off to school or whatever. And some mornings she would get up at 9 or 10 or whatever, but she eventually was talking to a life coach or maybe it was her therapist. I can't remember exactly. And they started introducing her to the idea because she felt like she was lazy or lacking in some way. So they started talking about, well, maybe try to introduce some of these habits into your mornings to get yourself going. And so she did that. And then she really, I think, ran with it. She really adopted some of that stuff, got up, got outside, got some sunlight, got something to drink, did some exercise, all of those things to get herself going. And it allowed me to reflect on my own morning routine. I'll share mine in just a minute, but I've done most of the talking so far, so I'll let you start, Elliot. I'll put you on the hot seat here. What does your morning routine look like?
Well, I will say it is highly dependent on the day of the week. And I won't even say that it is weekday versus weekend. It is, like I shared on our last episode that we recorded, because I am a hybrid employee, I have days of the week where I am in office and my commute is north of half an hour one way to get there. And so the days in which I go to the office, I am awake at either 5:15, 5:30. Like that's about where I wake up. Now, if I have showered the night before, then I essentially sleep until 5:30. Otherwise, I get up at 5:15 so that I can shower and shave and get out the door and be presentable. I get to work pretty darn early in the morning, so on those in-office days, it really ranges between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, depending on how terrible traffic is in the morning. And the reason that I go so early is so that I can avoid that. But even like today, I was a little bit later. I would say I was like 10 minutes later than I normally would be, and it translated to probably 20 minutes later that I actually got to work today. So even something that minute kind of expands. Yeah, as far as morning routine, I try and make it very minimalistic. I basically wake up, I do all my bathroom requirements, and then get dressed, grab my laptop and my water bottle, and I head out the door. And then I'm kind of off to the races. Now, yeah, I'll pause here for a second.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about your non-in-office days, so your work from home days. What does that time frame look like from wake up to basically log on?
Yeah, I still try to I start at 7 o'clock in the morning is the time that I log on. And so the steps that I take are the same, but I usually give myself some extra Z's in the morning. So I probably, I think my alarm goes off an hour later. So 6:30 is the time that I get up. And so give myself a little bit of extra sleep and then um, still hit the ground running at the at-home office by 7.
Interesting. I would say that my morning routine has definitely evolved over time, and I used to be in that same kind of category that you're in, where it was sleep as late as I can, do as little as I need to do in the morning, and get out the door. I know that it didn't necessarily work with my mood, my mentality, like who I am as a person. It never felt great. I hated the fact that I was like on the road driving, or even if I was working from home, I was like up and at it. And I was always, as we got over recent years, when people were working remotely, I would hear the talk about how they hadn't showered yet or hadn't changed their clothes. They were still in their pajamas, and that never really sat well with me. So I'll go back to I'll just tell you what my current morning routine is. And that is that Monday through Thursday, my wife and I, we wake up at 5 a.m. And that's something that we've kind of developed over, I would say, the last 7 or 8 years. Back when the kids were a little bit younger and when jobs were less remote or less local, we were still getting up somewhere around 5:30 or 6, and we would try to squeeze in a quick exercise or have a cup of coffee or something in the morning, and then we would be getting ready for work. But as things have loosened up for us, I'm no longer working, and she works less than a mile up the street. I looked at it this morning. It's zero point 0.9 miles, or less than a mile from our house. So she likes to get there around 7:30. But now we wake up, do our morning like bathroom stuff, make the bed, change our clothes, and we have a cup of coffee. And I usually have what I really enjoy now, I call it like our slow morning, is we'll have about an hour and 15 minutes to just do really whatever we want. I choose to typically read, or sometimes I'm editing these podcasts, or sometimes I find that's like the most focused and the most creative that I can be, like that first couple of hours in the morning. And I tend to get a lot done. I kind of look back at what I've done over the week, and sometimes it's like those first couple hours in the morning are the most meaningful to my life. And then we will wrap up with coffee and usually get a, oh, I did forget one step. I always get myself a glass of water first thing in the morning. That's something that I learned long ago. I think Jeff Cavalier from Athlete X, I still follow him, but for like nutrition advice, he had recommended that your body goes through dehydration mode overnight, and that's why you have to use the restroom immediately when you wake up, and you should replenish yourself. And I've done that for years now, and I couldn't imagine not doing that at this point. I drink 16 ounces of water immediately, and then I have coffee. But we get our workouts in. Typically, Lori's looking at about a half an hour's worth of a workout, and I'm generally spending nowadays 45 minutes to an hour. And that's a series of stretches and just a workout routine that I'm following. And then I'll make myself breakfast, so that the whole time frame lasts about 3 hours. And I realize that that's a luxury that I have at this stage of my life. I no longer have small kids to look after or take to school or anything like that, but I'm still making the quote unquote sacrifice to get up at 5 a.m. to be able to have that time.
Yeah.
And then our weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it's generally the same process, but we typically will just wake up when, like, naturally. We don't have an alarm set, and that usually falls somewhere between the 6 and 7 o'clock hour that we wake up, and then we just do the exact same thing. And maybe sometimes it's a little slightly slower pace where we spend a little bit more time exercising or take a walk, or a little bit more time doing that deep work that I've come to appreciate early in the mornings. And now I view it as a superpower, because as I reflect back to whenever I was rushing through and just getting out the door as quickly as possible, or getting started with work as quickly as possible, I missed out on that time to really set my intentions for the day. And sometimes it's even just looking at, what do I hope to accomplish today, or what, working through, if I'm working on a rental house, for example, these are the things that I need to take with me, or just really just having that time to really be able to have some clarity and not be in a rush.
Yeah. Nice luxury that you have there, Josh. No, that's fantastic. And it's, of course, like you said, you, on the weekdays, those Monday through Thursday, you are forcing yourself into still that discipline of getting up at 5 a.m. Like that's still earlier than I'm getting up. There was a time where I've done like group workout classes that have started that early before. And yeah, like, I don't know. It is very early, but at that point, what's another 15 minutes? But yeah, as far as my weekends, they're a lot the same as yours in that I wake up without an alarm clock. I will say that I have three little alarm clocks running around in my house, and so generally I'm up because somebody else is up. However, there are times where my saint of a wife in Dawn does allow me to sleep in. And so, like, I think even last week was one of those where she let me sleep until 8 o'clock, and that was fantastic. So, it does happen on occasion as well. But otherwise, yeah, I'm straight into dad mode or whatever we're doing for the day, whatever tasks we need to get done. But as far as, intentionality, I think we still live and die by our shared Google calendars. And part of that is also that on Sundays, generally, I have been meal planning the upcoming week. And so in doing that, I write down what are everybody's activities for the entire week, because then in some ways that'll dictate what we're going to eat for dinner that night. Is like, oh, hey, if there's soccer practice tonight, then hey, maybe we don't have time to do this, more complex dinner or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, hey, we're just going to have to do something a little bit faster. So, yeah, we're having grilled cheese tonight or quesadillas or chicken McNuggets or whatever it is, as opposed to, yeah, I'm making some elaborate fish like salmon tonight or whatever. And that was a terrible example because salmon cooks really fast, but you get my point. So yeah, it is very interesting that, how much, well, I'll go back and address a few of the other things that you said. So I forget the exact quote, but doing your hardest thing first in the day, I share that feeling 100%. And the quote is something along the lines of eat your frog first thing in the morning or something like that. And just suggesting that you should do your hardest thing first because, like, you literally have the most willpower. In my example, or for myself, I know that I have the most willpower first thing in the morning. I can get something done. And then, like a workout routine, at least you can knock it out and you have the rest of your day available to you, right? And feel like you've gotten a sense of accomplishment. You can move on and feel energized from that. Yes, it's good to hear that there is power in that you guys are seeing, and hopefully I can translate that into my own routine moving forward.
Just to be clear, I'm not here to encourage or try to persuade any kind of change whatsoever with your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is your own. I've just found that this is what has worked for me. And it was interesting that as Sarah shared that with me, I think it was last week, and I got together with my buddy Greg that same day. And shameless plug, he and I have a podcast as well. It's not anything FI related, but we just talk about our lives and things that we're interested in. And I mentioned to him that I had listened to this podcast about morning routine and talked through mine a little bit. And I asked him about his morning routine, and he works from home Monday through Friday, 100%. He's remote. And he has a similar schedule that you mentioned where I wake up about 6:40 and my coffee is set the night before and I log on at 7. And I'm like, okay, wow, that works for you. That's great. And I shared what my morning routine was, and I could see the wheels turning a little bit. Like he had never considered, because one of the things that we have talked about in some of our conversations is exercise and just getting out, maybe going for a walk or a jog or whatever that he has mentioned that he doesn't feel that he has time to do. So I was talking about how we wake up at 5, I still have some coffee, and then we have a workout. And he's like, yeah, I think I could do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. easier said than done, Greg.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is not always, yes, great intentions, but no, I mean, I have done it in the past. I know that its benefits are very strong once you build the habit. And I think that's the most important part is building the habit, right? Is even in the workout routine that I said that I had been doing and then broke here a week ago, is I had been doing it for 2 weeks at least. Like it started to feel like it's habit forming where it's like, yep, every 2 days, more or less, then yep, you're hitting that, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, you're going to do this activity. And so it is very hard once you break that habit. Like if you don't immediately go get right back on the horse, so to speak, that it's easy to fall off the wagon and not and especially if it's a habit that you haven't had for that long. Now, obviously, if you've you know, how long have you and Lori been waking up at 5 in the morning working out?
I feel like I've lost track at this point. I was trying to remember when it started, and I know it was pre-COVID, so it's been greater than 6 years. I cannot recall. I know that I started, and I don't mean to say that like I'm taking credit for it, but I remember that she was of the same mentality for quite some time. And she thought, I don't have time to exercise. I can't imagine waking up any earlier than I wake up, whether that was 6 o'clock or whatever time it was. So I said, I want to make this effort for myself. I want to say this was probably in my mid 30s. So it's probably been 12 to 15 years that I started trying to make that daily habit. And then she was like, you're getting up anyway. And then it evolved to where she was joining me for the workouts. And then I would say that she's even more of an advocate for sticking to that schedule than I am. In fact, whenever we go on vacation, when we were in Vegas for 2 weeks a couple of months ago, we still have the exact same morning routine. The time shifts because we're not waking up to an alarm, but once we do, it's the same routine. It's slow mornings, couple cups of coffee, and then find the gym. And it's pretty much every day. And now it's at the point that if we miss a day or two, we both really will notice it. And it's either some form of irritability or just not feeling right, not feeling ourselves because we've taken that away from ourselves. And now I expect that it's just going to be how my mornings are for the rest of my life. Maybe some little tweaks here and there, but it really works for me now. And I feel like I may have mentioned this already, but I do feel like it's a superpower.
So you found the source of my irritability, huh? I'll have to tell Dawn that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now she might not. It'd be interesting to if you were to say, "Hey, I'm going to start waking up at 5 a.m." Would she appreciate that?
As far as, and that's a good point, is when you were talking about when you started the process, when Lori said, well, you're getting up anyway, was it because you were waking her up when you were getting up?
Yeah, she did not feel like she could just, and I'm the same way. Once one of us is awake, the other one, it's very difficult for us to fall back to sleep.
Yeah. No, I don't think that Dawn and I have the same affliction. So, yes. I mean, Dawn, like, is able, I mean, I don't know how frequently she truly wakes up to me getting up at 5:30, but she's good about still being asleep at the time that I leave. And I try and be very quiet, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
an alarm still happens at 5:30 in the morning.
So you're gonna give anything a try, or is just information?
Nope. Nope. Yeah, no,
The
no,
power
no.
of saying no.
I'm Yeah, the power of saying no. I'm putting it into practice is I will say like um my brother goes to, are you familiar with the organization F3? Have you
Yes.
ever, so he has started going to F3 classes, which for anybody listening that isn't familiar, it is a free workout class for men. And I think there is also a women's equivalent that organization puts on, but they're free. They're in probably every major city. multiple groups within major cities. And so he gets up, and I think they start at 5 o'clock in the morning, which means, and they're always outside. So it is, you know, getting up and getting to the place by 5 o'clock in the morning to do a workout, a group workout with other people. And so there is certainly a part of that that appeals to me because I am certainly more externally motivated than internally motivated. And I know that about myself. And so probably you, like myself, is the fact that I know theoretically that I'm letting somebody down is more motivating than letting myself down. But I also know that that means instead of getting up at 5 in the morning, I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning or whatever it is, 4:45. So it's not lost on me that all of this comes with another layer. And the other piece of this is that I think I talked about this on one of our earlier episodes that I've been doing more of like a strength training regimen 3 days a week. One of those 3 days a week happens to fall on one of the days that I'm going in office. So either I'm going to have to amend my in-office schedule or I have to make some sort of arrangement. Either I would come into work later and then in turn work later in that day, or it's just something that I will have to work around and adjust. So I haven't solved the problem yet.
Or just get up earlier.
I I mean, yeah, the anything with a four in front of it is not even I think a consideration. But like as far as what you talked about, as far as you and Lori, like what time and how long it takes you, even if you were doing like a 45-minute workout, I feel like my workouts right now are taking an hour plus just with some of the rests in between. And I know we talked about this also, like you were talking about, well, I'm doing higher number of reps, but less resting and things like that. Don't have all the answers yet, but maybe someday soon.
Yeah, it's all about experimentation. I've tried that workout that you described, and it was taking considerably longer, and that's where had to maybe draw a little bit of a line. I thought that if it's taken me greater than an hour, and maybe it's a little bit too long. And then going back to your comment on F3, I was invited by a neighbor to join them a while back, and whenever I got the information and saw that I had to be there at 5 a.m., that's kind of where I drew the line too. And then going back to I'm going to wake up Lori as well if I'm trying to get up at 4 or 4:30, and then I don't get that slow start that I'm really looking for, that I really enjoy, just being able to sit there and fully wake up, have that cup of coffee, and not be in a rush. And I didn't want to give that up. So I feel like you mentioned internal versus externally motivated. I do have, now I haven't met all my goals, obviously, and I don't necessarily look and feel exactly how I want to, but I certainly think that I would look and feel a lot worse than I do if I didn't have this morning routine. And so it's it is an internal motivator that I'm on a whatever daily basis. We even had a quick chat about it this morning where I joked where I said I need a sign on, and I guess this is externally motivated, but I need a sign in our little gym that says ab day is every day, something to that effect, because that's one of those areas that I skip. And I need another one that says never skip leg day, which I know is a common phrase in the exercise community. Those are both things that I struggle with.
Trying to balance, and I think I expressed this on one of our earlier podcast episodes, is what is the right routine for me. And like you said earlier, was experimentation. You're like Brad likes to talk about, you're an N of one, and all of that is exactly that. You just need to go try things out and see what works and what doesn't. I would wholly agree with you, is getting into a more common routine and doing it more frequently, I think, is generally just better for you as your health is concerned. Like, you know, we were told the old adage of 30 minutes a day, you know, is what you should be striving for. And so, like, if you could, I think, obviously, I'm coming from a place personally where I feel like I'm out of shape, I'm overweight, and get to the point where I'm at least now I'm just trying to maintain a better shape, then you can probably pull some of that time back down and increase that frequency. But I think also just the act merely of moving will get you to that point of where you're in better shape and you don't need to feel like you're putting up PRs every time or whatever else. Like, I think I know that you and I talked about this in person, is trying to let go of some of that. I forget the phrasing that you use,
Ego.
but
Leave your
just
ego at the
become,
door.
yes, yeah, leave your ego at the door and just be okay with, I'm just doing lower weight, but I'm doing many more reps. Like, if it gets you to the same end result or just the end result of being happier, healthier, in a better state of mind and body, then great. Who cares?
And I think you bring up a good point that if you're starting out, it might be more work up front to get the results or to see significant results that you're looking for over maybe a shorter period of time. And then you can scale that back as you're seeing those results and looking for more of a maintenance type of program, or instead of having the significant results all stacked up in a, let's say it's a weight loss goal, and over a short period of time, maybe it's 2 months, you lose 10 pounds, but then over the following 2 months, you're okay with 5 pounds because you're seeing that it's working, but I don't necessarily need to go at the same pace. And then at that point, you can make an adjustment, and perhaps you're able to sleep in a little bit longer because you don't have to put in an hour or whatever it might be in that workout. You're scaling it down to 45 minutes or a half an hour. You never know.
Exactly. That's right.
So curious, real quick, about evening routines. We talked a lot about morning routine. Do you guys have any kind of evening routine?
That are constructive. Yeah. Like, I would say that I know this is something that you and I talked about at a campfire. I guess it would be over a year ago now when we went to Campfire, Florida in 2025. Was that at that time we did not have a TV in our bedroom. And that actually changed after I had foot surgery because I was going to be in my bedroom for 23, 24 hours a day. And so now we have a TV in our bedroom. So we have become much more prone to just watching, a show or two or 10, depending on that. No, no, no. Nothing that egregious, but watching a couple of shows a night before we go to sleep. Or sometimes in my case, I watch about 5 minutes and then Dawn gets to watch whatever she wants because I've passed out. So I will say that routine is fairly new, but I say new being like about a year at this time or 6 months at this time. Very much a change in, I would say it used to be we were out in our living room doing kind of whatever, but then when nighttime set in, it was going to bed to go to sleep or read a book and go to bed. How about you?
It's funny that you brought up the Camp Fi of last year because we had the pleasure of having Mr. Money Mustache in attendance, and that was one of the questions that I asked him that I was struggling with at the time. And maybe you and I having that conversation led me to ask him that question. But just said, hey, what do you do in the evenings? What do your evenings look like? Because I was just curious as a guy who's going to have a lot more free time on my hands, and I wanted to make my evenings just as meaningful as my mornings. And he gave me a list of things. He's basically said that he doesn't watch any TV. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. But I remember him saying, get out, go for a walk, wind your mind down, and spend time with your significant other, talk through the day that you had and the expectations for the following day. Maybe spend some time playing a game, take your mind off of things so that you sleep as well as you possibly can. And then go to bed, go to sleep. And I think he even made the joke of no TVs in your bedroom. The bedroom is for two things and two things only.
I do distinctly remember his comments there. Yes.
And I don't think we have a great evening routine, but we definitely have a routine, but I don't think it's a great one. Typically, what we do, I made some notes here in that we do lower our lights. That's always been something that, for whatever reason, it just felt natural. When our kids were little, that was something that we really, I give credit to Lori. She was like, okay, lights are going off at basically at dark, and that we want them to wind down naturally. And then we have always had a consistent bedtime. That's unless we're out doing something like at a concert, I'm usually trying to get in bed sometime between 9 and 9:30. That goes for the weekends as well, most of the time. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll watch a show in our living room and then we're pretty much falling asleep. We're getting sleepy and one of us will say, "I'm ready when you are," and we go to bed together. Typically we're starting the dishwasher, like that's our routine, make sure that runs overnight. And I will say, with regards to watching TV, we usually try to end our TV watching on something that is funny or fiction, not something that is going to be like world events and going to get our.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you're not watching Game of Thrones before you go to sleep.
No, I find that is okay to watch. I don't have any issue watching Game of Thrones and then turning it off and going to bed. But if I watch Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, for example, right before bed, that could be a
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. No, politics or just, I don't watch the news at all.
Yeah, we
I
don't either.
very rare. I mean, I will watch if I get any kind of news, it is generally, like you said, from some comedian, generally. So I get what you mean. It is like, yeah, there would be no world where that is the last thing that I'm doing before I go to sleep. But yeah, I'm watching whatever TV show generally.
And I didn't mention it with the morning routines, but the same holds true with the evening routines. Actually, just I guess it holds true for throughout the day. You mentioned news, but I don't mess around with any kind of social media either. That's one of the things that I always have my phone next to me in bed, but it's always on silent. It's on silent 24 hours a day. That's why I never answer when you call. But I don't wake up and look at it. I have it with me when I come upstairs after I've woke up, but I typically will just look at maybe the weather or maybe nothing. And I feel like that's another like superpower. You hear that all the time. Is like, don't get wrapped up in whatever's going on out in the world. Just stick with, like you said, your N of one. Make sure that you're focusing on yourself and what's important in your life instead of worrying about what's going on with other people or whatever's going on out in the world.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't share that is I am once again free again.
Oh, nice.
So I did once we made the decision that we were staying stateside, it was very shortly thereafter that Facebook got the axe yet again. So
How about Amazon?
Amazon has persisted so far. So I I do have a message from Dawn to you is she said that Josh can stick it because I do most of the shopping in this house. So no, the convenience factor of Amazon has persisted for the moment. So we'll see if we continue to bring that up. But at the moment, it remains.
So I have a confession to make.
Oh
The
no.
last time we talked, you mentioned that you were back on Amazon, and I was like, "Oh, Elliot, you were doing so well." And it was maybe a day or so later that Lori had mentioned something about Prime, and I'm like, "We don't have Prime anymore." And she's, "Yeah, we do." I'm like, "Oh no, you're killing me.
Yeah.
You made
Yep.
me out to be a liar on my own podcast." And
Yeah.
she said,
Yeah. Yeah.
"You
Yeah.
talked about this on the podcast?" I said, "Yeah." And she like really felt bad that she went back in and
Yeah.
she thinks she paused it again. I don't know if that
Oh
I don't
no.
we'll have to look, but
Well, Tell her that she can have a pass now because we also have failed, and the draw of Amazon apparently is too strong. So Bezos does know what he's doing.
It is very convenient, I'll admit. I had a couple of things that I had to order this week and it they've already arrived, so I get
Yep.
it.
I will say that I personally have not ordered anything on Amazon. However, I have consumed media from Amazon, which is equally as bad. So, I'm catching up on are you familiar with the series Fallout?
Yes.
So I am watching season 2 of Fallout currently. So
Okay. I didn't realize that was on Prime.
getting my fix. Yep.
And I've watched
Yep.
it. Similar to that, I know that we've talked about the money leaks and really trying, it's just constantly playing defense and being smart about things. And we're always just in that perpetual state of trying to keep things away, but then they find their way back in. And you brought up Game of Thrones. We did have access to HBO for a while, and then we lost it. We were borrowing it from someone, and then now we've had to get a subscription to HBO because we're watching Game of Thrones. And then there's something else on there that I think we're going to watch next. So it's like we got HBO, we've got Netflix. We may or may not have Prime. I'm not even sure at this point. I know we have access to Disney Plus, but I'm not sure if we're paying for that because I clicked on it yesterday and I'm like, I don't remember that we had this. And so Daredevil
Yeah,
is on
yep.
there and I want to watch that.
Oh yeah. I haven't watched the most recent on where the content has switched to Disney running it as opposed to
The
Netflix.
first
So
season I didn't think it was great, but the second season just came out. I haven't watched any of it, but I've heard that it's a lot more action.
that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. No, I mean, I was listening to the Choose Five podcast this morning on my commute into the office today, and they were talking specifically about, I think, how did they refer to it as? It was the new tool on the podcast that's like the value matrix, I think is what they called
Yep.
it. So I listened to the first episode where they had set up like, oh, we're going to go through 4 case studies, and they made it through about one of them. But so I bring all of this up because Jonathan Brad had said, don't feel like you need to have any allegiance to any of your streaming providers. Like you can put them all on pause and binge your one show and then go over to your next because I mean you're right, is when you start to have 4 or 5 of these things, they do add up.
I haven't looked at that value matrix yet. It sounds intriguing, but at the same time, I feel like it's subjective, so subjective that you might overvalue things. And if I sat down with Lori and I said, okay, here, Amazon Prime, it would fall into the high category of it's convenient and I get a lot of value from it or whatever they're how it
Right.
works. But and then I would say I would be on the other end of the spectrum where even though I might feel like I get great value from it, I would be like, but I don't want to have to pay for a service.
Yep. No, it's hard. So I know the not wanting to pay for things, and really what we talked about a couple of episodes ago, the the juxtaposition of the cheap and frugal has certainly been an inner dialogue in my own mind lately. And so, yeah, that I get it. So,
Yes, subscription to Prime might be in the cheap category, depending on how you look at it.
right. Who knows?
A good conversation, Elliot.
That's right. Anything else that we want to impart our wisdom on as far as morning routines before we let our listeners go back to their own routines?
I cannot emphasize how much of a game changer it has been for me personally. And I would just encourage anybody to start small if you want to have more time for yourself and really do the things that are going to be beneficial for yourself. Go back to that self discipline and the not telling yourself no. There's just little things that you can do like that with the experiment of just getting up a little earlier or maybe rearranging your work schedule, whatever it might be, that you find some of that opportunity there.
Maybe I'll time my first shoe tomorrow, right?
Yeah, set your workout
That's
clothes
the
out.
Yeah,
next to
yeah.
your
Set
bed.
my workout clothes. Yep. Well, if you enjoyed it, as always, we'd appreciate it if you share it to your friends. And thanks for listening.
Yep.
And thank you to Maggie from Inside Out Money and Sarah for sending Josh her way so that we had a good discussion topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sarah.
Until next time.
See you, Elliot.
See you, Josh.